And hello! Yes, tonight is another Patreon sculpt, and I'm going to use his screen name, CrazyJ, or CrazyJ64, is going to be the patron for whom I am sculpting today. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
Okay, now, as with several of my previous sculpts, he's given me some concept art, but before I show it to you, I have an announcement to make. Some of you have heard this already. You've seen it on some other places, but about 5 minutes, almost literally 5 minutes after I ended my broadcast Thursday, I got an email that sealed the deal and confirmed everything. So as of this show, I am now actually sponsored. I am sponsored by Anycubic. So I will be, in fact, using, printing out my versions of these miniatures in resin now. I will still do my best to try to make sure that most of them are printable on FDM, that they don't have too much detail. But the fact is, I can print them in resin now. Anyway, back to CrazyJ. Now, I know that there's pretty much only a couple people in the broadcast right now, but there'll be people watching this later, either replay on Twitch or watching the archives on YouTube. So, I'm going to go ahead and show you the concept art for Assoum, the dwarf. There he is. Now, you said he was a druid?
Yeah, he's a moon druid.
A moon druid, which shape changer.
So
okay.
Basically, he's in the TOA game that I'm in, so the Tomb of Annihilation. So he's supposed to be a guide in the jungle that's trying to guide them through.
I coincidentally am playing a Circle of the Moon druid in Tomb of Annihilation right now. To be exact, a dragonborn druid who turns into all sorts of different dinosaurs, because that's what he's been able to see while he's there. And trust me, the Deinonychus is nasty at low levels. Okay, so that is our basic concept. We're going to start. We're going to go ahead and move in to Dad's studio. And we have it right now at the basic human figure. We're going to load in. Oh, that's right. We've got to do that staff. So we're going to go ahead and leave him like this. We're going to move from Dad's studio to 3D Studio. Right there. Now, you want his staff in his left hand?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, we're going to start with something very basically simple. A cylinder. Now, we want we want it to be about as high as his upper arm so that he can just hold it comfortably and then go up higher from that. So we're looking at about there. Now, I need to make the top cap have 2 segments so that I actually have geometry there. I don't need height segments. And I can bring the sides down to 10. Now I'm going to extend it. Oh, way too far. Way too tall. We don't need it that high. It would take forever to print. About there. Now what we're going to do, we need to make this into like a tree root system, correct?
Yep.
Okay, first things first, we're going to make sure that this is about where it needs to be in the hand, where all the other staff types are. And now we're going to select these points and pull them out a bit. And shrink it again and pull out the center point. The reason is because this is going to be what we're going to extrude out to make the basic roots. So I select these 4 polygons right here. I'm going to extrude them out ever so slightly. And then I'm going to turn it and make it go forward a bit. Also going to shrink it a bit because roots get smaller as they leave the general vicinity of the trunk, just like branches. Okay, that's 1. Now we're gonna end up doing 5 of these basically, and at least 1 or 2 will have an additional branch. The biggest problem is going to be these will be kind of thin and fragile when you print them. I'm assuming you're prepared for that.
Oh, of course.
Are you printing with resin or in FDM?
I got the photon, so I can do either one actually, and the Ender 3. So.
Okay, excellent. On a Quinkadink, I have the CR10 and I'm about to have the photon. We're going to actually cause this one to bend outwards a little bit in addition to going forward, so... let's move it a bit more like that. There we go. And we're going to shrink it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and on the screen down here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can see the results. After I pull these out, like I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to add in a little bit of chaos, and then I'm going to relax it. Now, you're one of the Patreons that I sent the basic files to.
Yep.
And you had made your version of this tree root staff. May I ask what program you used to make your version?
I use the same one you're using right now. I did it a lot different though, so it's kind of cool watching to see the different ways you can do it.
Oh, there's always any number of ways to make anything in any 3D modeling program. Adding deformations or starting with totally different base geometries. Yeah, it's a thing. Alright. Now, since you are on that tier, this does mean that unless you say otherwise, I will be printing out a version for you. Do you want that?
No, I think like, since I have it, I don't think we need to.
Okay. And let's turn this one in quite a bit more. Let's make it almost go in negative. Because sometimes they do that. Extrude again. To there. Make it smaller. And now the last one. Right here. Now what we're going to do after we extrude this last one is I'm going to select these vertexes right here. Can you see where I have them selected? It'll take about 5 or 10 seconds from your point of view, Crazy Jay. Right at the base of where I'm extruding those roots from.
Yeah, I think I see what you're talking about, yeah.
I'm going to add a chaos modifier to those. A noise modifier is what it's called, so that they won't be coming from one even sprout. Okay, so now we extrude this one. This one's going to go a little bit further out than the previous one. And we're going to do here and here. And then shrink it a bit. And then extrude out. Okay, and we're going to shrink it a bit. Okay. Now the next thing I do is I go up here to the smooth modifier. I hit 1. All that does is make all those hard edges we had here look more like they were smooth edges. So now I have these vertexes selected. I'm going to drag it down to about here. And then I add noise. Now right now you see nothing. Okay, that's not what we're going to need there. Oh, that's right, because it's directional. There we go. Now, we have a lot of noise. We shrink the scale of the noise. Whoop. We need to make it fractal. So that'll be roughness of 10. And we shrink the amount of noise. And then collapse. And we're going to drag it back this way a little bit more. And that's what it's looking like currently. We're not done with this yet. We need to add in a couple more edges to sharpen it. Now you've noticed I've selected these edges. I hit connect down here. You also notice I'm using edible poly, not edible mesh. And I shrink that on X to 0 so that it's flat. And then move it all the way over here so that it's almost at the edge. And you'll see that it's now has almost a sharp edge there. It's not sharp, but it'll keep its structure when we smooth it. Right now, if I hit mesh smooth, it's looking like it's almost a mangrove pulled from the swamp. But what we really need to do, we need to select all of these. Aha, I see what we need to do. Select those two, these two. We're selecting the small end vertexes on the bends in each of these roots. And now I'm going to use push to make it thicker, to make it almost rounder up there. And I mesh smooth again, and it's not as funky. You could almost put an orb or something on the top there.
Yeah, it's looking really good.
Now, also I noticed in the image there is a bit of a bend in the staff.
Yeah, I figured most branches that come from a tree or something wouldn't be exactly straight, so it would have some type of bend, you know?
Okay. So to handle that, what we're going to do is we're going to select again. We're going to connect it. Up here where it says segments, we're going to make it 4 segments. The reason for that is we want to have enough to where we can get our little bend in, but we also want to keep a decent position for where the hand is. So we're going to select the whole top. We're going to move it a little bit this way. Then we're going to select these, and we're going to kind of move them more down. It's enough to give it a bit of a chaos to the bend, a little bit more natural. It still looks like a moderately straight sapling, but it's bent enough to look more natural. So when we hit mesh smooth, it's got that bend, but the hand is still right in the right place on the hand. We're not going to fully smooth it yet because I think I really want to make these a little bit thicker just to make it more likely to be successful for our friends who are using an FDM printer. So I'm going to push, which it won't make it that much larger, but it'll make the branches a bit thicker. The branches or the roots or whatever they are for your character. And it also has that bit of how a sapling tends to be thicker at the base than at the top. And that should be good. Does that look good for you?
Yeah, it looks amazing. I love it.
Okay. Now I'll just hit collapse all. I've got the body frozen, the person. So I'm going to click hide frozen objects, and now I have just this. Now you can't see the dialogues that come up when I type. I've gone to export selected. And it's pulling up the file, and I have a 3D printing directory on my desktop. I'm going to it, and going to my Patreon minis, new, and I change it to Wavefront OBJ. The reason I'm using that is because that is the easiest file format to work with in ZBrush and Daz Studio. So this will be Assoum staff. That's ASSOUM, correct?
Correct.
Because you assume the forms of other creatures?
Yeah, it's fun to mess with people when you're talking to them.
Well, unfortunately, I'm doing it in basically Adventure League or D&D Encounters, which means that we don't really have enough time at our table from 6 in the evening till 8:30 in the evening to do much actual role play. So now we have our buddy here. We're not going to turn him into a dwarf yet because we need to load in that staff. So I go to Patreon minis, assume staff, accept. Now it's invisible. I've mentioned this occasionally in other videos where I made props and that's because Daz Studio, for some strange reason, doesn't call it opacity, it calls it transparency. 100% transparency is 0% opaque, so we got to change opacity strength to 100 to make it visible. His hand's also not posed around it. Now, easy way to handle that, we have him selected, we go to props, and we go to one of the pre-existing staffs, like the classic wizard staff. I select the ball and delete it, but it left the hand bent around in the right place. So now I'm going to take it and drag the assume staff onto the left hand, which means it's now parented. I can take it and I can bend the arm. Come on. There we go. I can bend the arm and the staff goes with it, even if it goes right through his head. Okay. Now, in the picture, let's go ahead and peek back at the picture, shall we? He's wearing bone armor. A bone armor belt, or is that a series of vials or teeth?
Teeth.
Okay. And what looks like a knee-length tunic. Are his boots supposed to be different from each other or not?
No, not really. It's just the way I was just drawn. I was just trying to get it down.
I kind of like the one on the right, where it's got a strap across the front of the instep, and then it's open in the front. It's like it's wrapped around from behind and tied on. Is that supposed to be just a kilt? What's the triangular piece
It's
in front?
just baggy pants.
Well, I meant it looks like he's wearing a kilt or a tunic around his waist.
It's just the way it was drawn, but it's just baggy pants, basically, not a kilt.
Okay, so we don't need to worry about that. But the only other thing I can see is that he's bald on top. He's got the full beard. Does he have any hair on the back of his head or no?
No. All bald.
All bald. Okay. His bracers are roughly identical, I would assume. And are they bracers or are they leather wraps?
Leather wraps.
Okay. That's a difference on how we're going to handle actually sculpting them out. We start off the same, but then we detail it differently. Okay. And are those scars or tattoos on his head and shoulder?
They're tattoos.
Okay, so that's something that you would paint on the printed figure. Okay. I'm going to give him actual braids for his mustache. I have something I can do that with.
I am excited to see that.
What it is, it's actually in, I believe I put it into the female side of the content library. Yes, I have a short braid. Now, it's huge, but I can take it. First of all, I scale it down quite a bit. Let's make it needs to be a little bit thicker to fit properly. And then I Z-scale it to make it shorter. Actually, no, I don't need to do that here. I need to do that in the individual pieces. But, alright, so I'm going to move to this tool, which gives me a handle tool to move it and all that. It's still a bit too long, but we're going to handle that as follows. I'm going to expand from selected and select all the individual pieces and Z-scale to make it shorter. All, yeah. Z-scale. Now, it's short and thick. That is not how an actual braid will look. But when you paint it, it looks like a braid, complete with a little strap at the end. I think it might be in the files that I gave you, actually.
Yeah, I have it. I saw it.
So I'm going to start from the first one. I'm going to bend down. I'm going to Y-translate to move it up. Actually, I need to go ahead and turn him into a dwarf first. As we discussed, since he's a tall dwarf, he's only going to get 80% of dwarf instead of 100%. As you can see, that's a little bit more height, not quite as thick. Okay, let's go to the front view. Select braid 1, and we're going to bring it down to about there. It's still a little large, but sad to say, any smaller and it does not show up in FDM at all. We're going to then twist it side to side. Yeah, we need to scale the whole thing down a little bit. That should be enough right there. Yeah, on the Anycubic there shouldn't be any problems replicating it. And we're going to go back to perspective. And from here we're going to Z-translate to move it back onto the cheek. We're putting it onto the cheek because you can't braid this part of your mustache. It doesn't work. I know people who have tried. Now what we're going to do is we're going to copy. Oh, let me get here. We're going to copy figure. Then we're going back to the content library. Make sure nothing is selected and select another one. And then going to parameters. Paste the figure. Now it's two of them in exactly the same place. So now what we have to do, we select braid 1 and we invert the side to side and the X translate. We're also going to go ahead and close it. Do you want his mouth open and roaring or closed in judgment?
Still closed in judgment.
Okay, because the default is a little bit half open. That's mostly to remind myself to do something. With the mouth, you use the X rotate to open or close the mouth. And that's too much. You want to get it to where it's closed, but it's not like completely losing all lip. We'll be exaggerating the bottom lip when we sculpt. Now, That is the first joint that we're going to be working with the braid. We're going to select the first 3. We go up here, it's under my camera, but I've selected right here, this orange part, it says all. That means whatever I do down here affects all of the body parts I currently have selected, which in this case is braids 2, 3, and 4. So now when I use side to side, they all bend. When I use it's the side to side and bend is all based on where the original orientation of it was. And then I'm going to select the others, and I'm going to kind of pop them out just a little bit. And now let's see. On this one, I had, well, let me go ahead and expand this one too. Expand from selected. Okay, so on this one, it's bend 535 and side to side -19. So, oh, bend -5. No, we need to bend to 5. And side to side 19, because we need to go opposite direction that one went. 5, 6, and 7 bent -12 and +7. So this will be -12 and -7. There. That's the basics for where our mustache is. Let me go ahead and pull out a bit. Now what we need to do is we need to give him a pose, and then we'll pose the mustache braids separately. Do you have any ideas what kind of pose you want him to have?
Why not with the staff and left arm, up, and then I think he would be, kind of resting on it essentially.
So like this, almost. Like, well, let me pull back. It'd take you a few seconds to see in my camera.
No, let's do the right arm at his hip. So he's left arm and then right arm on the hip.
Yeah, well, it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be about a 10-second lag. Do you want his head leaning against the staff or away from the staff?
Leaning probably in front of the staff a little bit.
So more like this. Kind of sticking his head forward.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Now, any kind of pose where you have one hand on the hip and the other hand doing something else, that cocks the hip. What that means is that this leg, the right leg, will go almost straight down, and this leg will be actually bent forward and the calf coming back. So what we do, we pull it to the side. Oh, it would help if I parented the braids to the head, so that when we pose him, it goes with them. We're going to go ahead and close the braids for right now. We will be going back in to tweak the individual ones as we pose. So take the hip. We go kind of pretty severely side to side. We're going to bend it forward just a little bit, because you never want the hip or the shoulders parallel to the ground in any direction. Okay, we go to front view. We're going to be handling the feet now. You can see on the feet that you can see the ground plane on the front view, so that gives us something to work towards. Try and be parallel to it, and then we hit Control D and it'll drop us to up to the ground. The only problem being that until we get this leg bent, it's farther down than the regular leg, the other leg. So we bend the leg forward, and then the shin back. Now we go back to front view, and we bend the foot. Oh, the foot, not the figure. And we see that we're too far. It'll be off the ground. So we need to unbend the calf a bit, and then we need to twist it a little. And for the most part, his legs are now in position. Again, we've got a bit of a, tilt going on, but the rest that gets fixed by the torso. Because of how because of how you want him, he's going to be kind of more leaning forward than anything. So we take the abdomen, we bring it kind of side to side, almost true, and bend it forward a bit. We're also going to twist it ever so slightly that way. We're now going to take the chest and bend backwards, just a little. We're going to side to side it even more and twist it a little bit more. Now this shoulder, we're going to side back, and now we're going to take the hand, slick the tips. You notice that the hand only has 2 segments for all 4 fingers. That's because really and truly we do most of our sculpting on the hand. Most of the hand posing is done in the sculpt, because otherwise we will have issues with the fact that there's 4 different length fingers. So I just select both finger parts, both finger parts, and I bend them. I then take this, I'm going to move it down a little, just a little, and a little bit like that. It's a bit more of a casual fist than what you would find from a combat, getting ready to throw a punch. We're going to bend the elbow just a bit. We're going to twist the upper arm. And I'm going to have to do some cheat here. Because this is a pose that a living thing can take, but these miniatures really have problems with the fantasy scaling, we're going to shrink the length of that forearm a bit. That's a bit too much. We're going to lift up the arm and rotate the hand. So the hand is what's making the connection. We're also going to lift it up by the shoulder. It makes it a little bit more heroic looking. Okay, we need to bend that joint a bit more and bring it a bit out, just so that we don't have problems with it poking through his pants. Okay, now we twist back the shoulder joint some. We now twist the arm. Now, since it's going to be kind of up a bit, we want to bend it a little that way. We're going to bend it down a little, and then we're going to bend the forearm and not twist, side to side. Okay. That right there, he's leaning a little bit too far away from it, so we need to bend it more this way and kind of pull it back, bring the twist back. Yes, creating the pose is very often a lot of trial and error. And twist. Z translate that just a little. Now we're going to take the neck. We're going to Z rotate it. So, we're going to take the neck and side to side it a little bit, so that we're getting a little bit more of a nod of the head towards the direction we want. Okay, this is not quite the pose you were asking for, so we're going to have to tweak it a little bit. So, I look at how my arm does it when I make this pose. First of all, I twisted it too far back. I need to have the arm more out, and then bending back forward. So it's okay. That's much closer to the head, and then we twist it about here. And we unbend the arm a bit. Again, we've got a problem here of proportion. Something that's easy, relatively easy for a human is a little bit more difficult for our little dwarf. And let's translate that down a bit. The front view. Okay. We need to twist that forearm a little bit that way. Or let's twist it so it's on the inside of his foot. Yeah, that's good. It still looks like he's kind of leaning on the staff. You can also bring it out forward a little bit because we don't need quite as much. That helps our center of gravity be more over a solid point. So what do you think of this as the basic pose from which we sculpt the basic figure? Crazy Jay?
I muted myself. It looks great though. It does. I like how you changed it right there.
Okay. So what we do first, we're going to go in and we're going to tweak the positioning of the braids a little bit. Now I'm going to pretty much fill in everything behind the braids to the chest and neck with beard. Because number one, dwarf. Number two, that's kind of how your figure looked. But this one here, we're going to twist it just a little. And we're going to dangle it a little bit further back than what it currently is. So we bend it. Because he's not exactly jumping around. So we're going to do something similar here with this braid. Not that far. Having it slightly off balance gives it a little bit more realism. It's that same thing I mentioned before with the hips and the shoulders. At no point are the hips and the shoulders parallel to each other or the ground. And that's what we want. That gives it more of a natural feel to the pose. Now, we're going to go ahead and hide the braids and the staff. Because in DAZ Studio, when you export, it exports everything that's currently visible. And you can hide it. There's a little eyeball next to each item down here. So now we're going to export, and we're going to save it as Assoum body. By the way, I don't know if you can hear my 3D printer or not. It's right below the table. I'm currently actually printing a dice tower. We're going to we're going to export that as Assoum stash. Accept. And then we hide them again. And this one I'll export as Assoum staff, which there's already one in here. That's what the original version. So I don't want to save over it because, you know, I might want to use this later. So I Assoum staff 2. Okay, that's Dad Studio done for now. So the next one we need to be in is ZBrush. So I go ahead and I import, and again from that directory, Patreon Minis new, Assoum body. I always have the body as the basic subtool. Now before I do anything else, there is some minor issues to clean up a little, like the back of this shoulder. And to do that, I'm first going to stroke lazy mouse off. I'm going to decrease the strength quite a bit, and I'm going to just kind of draw in where that crease is to kind of pull it out a bit. Then, I hit shift and I smooth it with an intensity of like 9. And what that does, that gives us a more even bend back there. We're going to do more when it comes time, but this is basically enough for now. Because a lot of this will actually end up being covered by the bone shirt. The next thing we got to worry about is you kind of pull up a little bit of the front and side of the left thigh. It did a bend that kind of occasionally tends to warp that part of the thigh. And then finally, we need to inflate the butt. Not because we want a big butt, but because by inflating, it'll move in towards itself, and it'll be covered by our baggy pants a bit better. When we're making it really large so I can go back in and smooth it and blend it in as one piece later after we Dynamesh. And we're also going to do a lot of tweaking of the shape. I know it's not most guys' favorite part of their body, but it's got to look real as real as we can. And frame. Also, because he's going to be wearing a bone shirt, we're going to be smoothing out the pectorals quite a bit, because they will be covered by that bone shirt. We're then going to inflate it quite a bit, just because, you know, it will still have an effect. We just don't want the detail of it there. And the same thing goes for the rib cage and that. Okay. And same thing goes for the center of the back. We don't want that. Alright, now, before we do anything else, we load in the rest of the parts. We go to Append, and select Polymesh 3D, select the Polymesh, import the stash. We append another Polymesh, select it, import the staff. Now, as things stand, he's still looking a lot like he did when we left Dad's Studio. We're going to hide the staff and the mustache. And we're going to geometry. We're going to subdivide it until it's about 1.4 million polygons. That usually ends up at subdivision level 4. We hit delete lower, And now we Dynamesh. What Dynamesh does, Dynamesh basically reskins the whole thing as one single manifold surface. Now in this case, we're doing it to a resolution of 768, which leaves us with 675,000 polygons. And one thing it did is that it merged that crack between the buttocks into one single set of geometry, which is what we wanted. Because we don't need no plumber's crack on no Druid. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
Okay, now we're going to smooth that area. And we're going to end up breaking out the tablet. Yay, Wacom! No, I'm not sponsored by Wacom. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make his belt. And part of how we're going to do that, when you hit Control-Shift, select the hand, everything vanishes but the hand. You click on the hand again, now the hand vanishes, and you can click on the rest of the body parts, and they will vanish as you do so. I'm doing that to make a clear space to reach for where I'm going to be putting his belt. Now, we are going to go to extract and have it ready at 0.03. We're going to shrink the mouse there, the mouse cursor, and then break out the Wacom stylus in its stylish 3D printed stylus holder. I hit Control, and focal shift up to maximum, or down to maximum, -100, and I'm going to draw on. Okay, that's too thick, so undo. I'm hitting the left square bracket to shrink the mouse. The right square bracket grows it. I'm going to draw across. Now, I couldn't tell from the drawing, was there a buckle in front on his belt of teeth, or was it just a couple teeth that were close together?
It was like a skull type buckle.
Okay, well that actually makes things easier because I have a skull insert mesh brush that I made a while back. Okay, that's where we have selected. We are going to extract that, and that's actually too far. So we're going to change the thickness to 0.02, extract, and accept. When you do this, the part becomes its own subtool and it's still masked. We drag out here and it's no longer masked. Also, the part you just extracted from is still masked. We turn off the mask so that we can go further. We're now going to hit Control-Shift and we're going to click out here. That brings everything back. Because we can, while we're working on one subtool, you can't affect the others, so we're not worried about it. Now we're going to Dynamesh at 256. We're then going to subdivide it a couple times. Delete lower. Now I'm going to break open the slash brush first. Make sure that it's not on Lazy Mouse. And I'm going to start drawing in grooves. Let me bring that down to about 15. These grooves will be where the teeth are. And I'm going to use Move Topological to make them pointy and etc. This will also be a nice detail for showing what a resin printer can do, because it will be visible on an FDM printer, but it won't be as clear. Actually, let's go ahead and just hide the body entirely. Yeah. Now, as you can see, when you extract, it goes in both directions. Not just in, but also out. But when you Dynamesh later, that goes away. Okay, now we go to Move Topological. And we shrink the mouse a little bit so that it's only slightly larger than the size of the average tooth. And we click and drag down. We need to make them a little bit more chaotic than this, so we're just gonna drag, make the body visible. Okay, yeah, good. When you do anything in ZBrush, whatever you last did is where it assumes the center of where you're working is. So it's a little difficult sometimes. Okay. Now we make him visible again. And as we can see, some of these teeth kind of poke through into the body. So I'm going to switch back to a regular move brush. The move topological moves based on how much of it is actually connected to where the center point is. This brush moves just everything in its radius that's on that particular subtool. So we're going to drag it. Oh, wrong one. I'm going to drag it out a bit. And for the most part, we're about there. Now we're going to kind of drag it from the center just because we want to kind of straighten up those particular teeth. Now, it looks okay, but we need to make it a little bit more impressive. So we're going to deformation down to inflate, and we're going to inflate it a little. There. Now when we go back up top and Dynamesh, or not Dynamesh, subdivide. Yeah, that's good. Well, we're going to go ahead and Dynamesh at 512 and see what happens. Yeah, that's good. That got rid of some of our anomalies, and it also gave us a nice look to it. If we want, we can go back in with slash, make it a little bit smaller, make the mouse about the size of each tooth, and just give the ones especially in front and back a little bit more of a cut in, so that when it comes time to print, it's a bit more obvious these are divided up. But the advantage is, teeth are almost universally white or yellow, so when it comes time to paint, since teeth don't really get a highlight since there's so much white, they just get a shading. We don't need to worry about a dry brush catching, we just need to worry about a wash digging into these grooves in between. So what type of dwarf is Assoum? Mountain dwarf, hill dwarf, albino dwarf?
He's a hill dwarf, but he's an albino. He's albino, just like Mushroom.
Okay. Well, fortunately, the albino part is entirely based on paint job. Yay! Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to give him a skull. So, I have a skull. I draw it on. And I go to Subtool. And I go to Split Unmasked Points to make that a new subtool. Because, as you can see, it's kind of floating there. So I'm going to go back to deformation. I'm going to offset it in the Z, because that's front and back. And that should be good for that. So how does that look for his skull belt buckle?
Oh, I love it. Looks good.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead. The skull needs to get mesh smoothed once. And the belt needs to get mesh smoothed once. And then we go ahead and we, well, merge down. When you do this the first time in any given session, it'll have cancel, OK, or always OK, skip this note to next restart. I use always OK because it's something I'm going to be doing throughout the show. Now, that is our skull and belt of teeth. The next step is his shirt, his bone shirt. Now, is he wearing the bone shirt over an actual tunic?
No, I don't think so.
Over bearskin?
Yeah.
Okay, that actually makes things a bit easier. And I'm starting to get a dry throat from talking so much. Yes, not only did I put this on Thingiverse, I actually use it literally every day in real life. Again, because of lag, it was my mug o can. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going back to him. We are going to actually draw on each of the bones for his
Bone armor.
bone armor. Thank you. Brain went in a mask. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the larger ones across the center of the chest. And we're doing it this large because I would assume that you would put, femurs across your chest if possible. Actually, no, we don't want to do that. The reason being is because you need flexibility across the center of the chest. So, instead of femurs, it's going to be... Oh. Instead of femurs, it's going to be arm bones. Or it could be femurs from a smaller critter. Now the thing is, this is not going to be extracted out like we have in the past. Instead, it's just going to be inflated out, because after we get this on, we're going to invert it so that the rest of the dwarf is actually no, we are going to extract it out, because I'm going to later on go back in and add in the straps down the bone. Did you know that there is a program NASA created where you can basically give it parameters, and it will run through every possible permutation until it meets the parameters. And they use this for determining the strongest possible shapes for a given performance. Well, out of curiosity, they decided to see what the strongest possible shape for the bone of a living thing. They gave it its load parameters, and the material tensile strength, and the size. And guess what? The computer, after literally millions of iterations, decided the best form was.
No clue. What is it?
Almost identical to the shape of a real bone. Thicker at the ends and thinner in the middle. So the computer decided Mother Nature was right. How's that for funny? Yeah. They then decided to do an actual analysis for a multi-girder setup for a satellite, and after tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of iterations, came up with a structure that was thicker at the ends and thinner in the middle, like a human bone.
So bones make good satellites too.
And yes, I know this because I don't forget a lot of what I read. And it just pops up out of nowhere, strangely, whenever it's not needed, or whenever something reminds me of it. Okay, and just to double check on... And I'm going to go ahead and take care of the ones down here. We don't want it to look like the cliche cartoon bone, because that would look really goofy. And the fact is, depending on what species and what kind of bone he's taken, these could be all sorts of different shapes, which is why I'm not really bothering with making them all identical. Some are actually smaller at one end than they are at the other, so... I'm going to keep a space between them, which means we now want to come in here, shrink the mouse quite a bit, and draw our gap a little bit thicker. We want to make sure we've got enough of a gap between each of these that they don't blend into one single solid bone, as that'd be a pain. We could fix it, but it'd still be a pain. Okay. Let's go right in there. And here. Okay, now we have those selected. We're going to go ahead and extract them at point 2. Accept, deselect, grab him, deselect him. Now we need to do one thing real quick. We need to Dynamesh at 512, higher than we normally would for something like this, because we want to keep that gap between the bones. Okay, now we go down to deformation, and we're going to polish. We're going to put polish at 100. Okay, that gives us a base to work from. We want it nice and round and organic. Let's do it again. couple times until it looks a lot more organic. Then we're going to take our mouse, make it a lot bigger. Yeah, that's good. And we're going to hit smooth down the middle of each of these bones. That'll round off the middles and make it look a little bit more like what we would expect. Okay. So how's it looking so far?
Looks amazing. It's better than I could have imagined so far.
The key secret to doing this is observation, just like in 2D art. When you look at the world, you look at what are the shapes that make something. You know, like the hand is a box with 5 tubes coming off of it, and the tubes are rounded at the ends. Now we're going to go ahead and use slash, shrink it down a bit, and we're going to, you know, actually we need to make it a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. Because some of these bones got fused when we dynameshed, like right in here. So we're going to cut that a little bit deeper. Then smooth. And right here. And this is mostly to, you know, help hide the fact that they did in fact fuse. Okay, and do we have any others? Okay. Now, we go up to Subtool and make the belt visible. And as we can see, the belt actually goes over the bones, thankfully. Now we need to make the strings that hold the bones. So we're going to hide the bones, go to the body, and we're going to draw on strings. Whoop. You see how that looks? Yes, good. We wanted to make sure they were in the right spot. And okay, from here and here. Now we're going to extract those at 0.04. Now we're going to deselect him, go back to his, and geometry, we're going to dynamesh at 128. We're not as worried about them being, you know, in the wrong spot. And then we're going to move topological again, because I think I need to move this one string over a bit more. I'm going to drag him over this way. Okay. Now, I'm going to shrink it. we're going to subdivide it, delete lower, and we're going to slash. Because what we're going to do is the string kind of dips down. We're going to make it a low intensity, large slash. The string is supposed to dip down where the bones are. No, it's not working. That's too big. Alright, you burp, burp. There we go. That's looking good. Because each string is actually a string in front and back tied together that holds the bones in place. In a real bone shirt, that is. Alright. After we do this, we're going to give it a... Well, that last one wasn't right there. After we do this, we're going to give it a little bit of a smoothing. The reason for that is we want to make it rounded, because it looks like string instead of strap. Okay, now the back. See, the thing about bone armor was great for slashing and bashing attacks, like a hatchet or a war club. It was not great for piercing attacks, like bow and arrow or, well, firearms. So it would very frequently have to have the individual bones replaced. So they very rapidly became ceremonial once their primary enemies started using guns. That's white folk, us folk. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to deformation. We're going to smooth 100%. And it did nothing. Okay. Alright, let's make the mouse really big and very lightly. Oh, very lightly smooth our strings. Our strings. We're going to shrink it back down, and we're going to put our slashes back in, because that got rid of all our slashes. All that work went... Oh well. We can make it a little bit more intense. Whoop, way too... Yeah, there we go. So you were playing around with the files that I sent you, huh?
Oh yeah, it's been a learning experience.
Did you figure out why the hat came out with reverse normals?
No, but then I did that staff last night, and it ended up being correct. So I'm not really sure where I went wrong.
Well, reverse normals usually are pretty easy to fix. Under normal circumstances, all that means is that something got, it's going to sound weird, scaled 100% in the negative. It basically, it did that. You know, scaling, instead of getting smaller and larger, it went to 0 and then went negative. So it turned the mesh inside out.
Yeah, I noticed when I went back to the file, it seemed like it didn't have any thickness to the hat, actually, to where I think is what the problem was as well.
Ah, did you use shell modifier?
No, I don't think so.
Shell's been around since, I think, Max 2009. you may or may not have noticed, but I'm using 3D Studio Max 2011. The reason for that is, number one, that's the last time I could save up enough to afford 3D Studio Max. And number two, I don't like the subscription model that they've got now. It's not good for people who are, either A, saving up for a copy that they can keep and use, like, low-end artists or low-income artists like me, or B, people who don't want the newest version of the software. 3D Studio Max used to be very notorious for every other version of the software was screwed up. Okay, there we go. That is our bone shirt. Let's go ahead and merge the bone shirt down to the, or merge the strings down to the bone shirt. Now, we've got bracers, pants, and boots for clothing left to do on them. It is now 7:15. We've been going an hour and 15 minutes. To be absolutely honest, this is still amazingly fast for something like this.
No, it's amazing.
The big advantage here is that since we are in fact using those basic posable figure files that I sent you, we have taken a lot of the front end time off. We didn't have to make a human or a dwarf from scratch. So next, let's go ahead. We're going to make the cuffs of the pants. Now, once again, looking at the picture, let's pull it up. The cuffs go down all the way to the boots, or the pants do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about this? From just below, from about mid-calf to the top of the foot, there's a wrap around the bottom of the pants so that it can kind of poof out. And then the boot comes around from behind so you can see the wrap in front of the open part of the boot.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, so what we're going to do then, we're going to go ahead and make we're going to start off with the boot itself. The reason being is because we need smooth geometry to work on to make this extended cuff part. Normally you want to work inside out. This is an exception where we're working by making extrusions from the base geometry. In this case, we want to work outside in because we want the inside to not be affected by the details we're adding. Okay, let's bring this out to here and down, and then here. Now, we are adding it in with a good bit of overlap, because what's going to happen is we're actually going to blend the bottom part of this boot cover in with the foot itself. We're also going to sharpen that by going a little high and using Control-Alt to erase off the very top corner, giving us a nice sharp point to that corner.
Hey, Valander, we can't see what you're doing again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a habit of that. All right.
I'm just here to keep you in check,
Oh, yeah. But like I said, the bottom end of this part is going to get blended into the foot itself later, not now. So I'm leaving it with a good bit of space on both sides to blend. Okay, now we're going to do it for the other leg. Now, because his leg is that part of the leg is bent differently, we're actually going to use less of the leg for this because his foot is coming out of that back part. We're going to extend it out a bit more back back behind him when we actually pull it out to kind of like how if you're wearing the high tops and you got the top of your high tops untied, when you bend your foot it goes between where the laces would be. Of course, high tops, how long has it been since those were popular? I just dated myself, didn't I? As if my gray beard and graying at the temples didn't do that already. Okay, and we need to come in here and burp, and then trim. Okay, we've got it selected off. Actually, that's going a little bit too... No, that's about right, yeah. And now we're going to go back over here to extract at 0.03. We want 0.03 because we want those, kind of stick out from the calves. Excuse me, stick out from the calves a good bit. And accept. That looks good. Deselect and go back up to Big Boss and deselect. Now we need to Dynamesh at 256. No, 128. The reason for this is... Oh, no, we need it at 256, yeah. It started to blend the bottoms of them, or the tops of them. Oh, no, that's not good. We still have a little string connecting them, so let's try blur of 0. 368. There we go. Now what we need to do now, besides turning off Dynamesh, is we need to make the mouse a bit bigger and do a full 100% smooth on the bottom here. We're going to do something else with it here in a second. When you have more polygons, it's harder to smooth because it's got to do more math when it does all, compares all polygons with all the ones next to it and all that. So if we tried to Dynamesh this again, we would get the same results, unfortunately. So we're going to use a different one. We're going to Z-remesher with an adaptive size of 78. And Z-remesher is another form of changing topology. It does not blend it into single surfaces the way Dynamesh does, but it does make it simpler to get a lower polygon version like we just did. We're now going to make the mouse just a little bit bigger, and we're going to use the stylus now. Oh. We want to kind of blend it in so that when it comes time, we can actually blend it better with the foot. We've still got a lot more work to do on the legs, so we're not going to Dynamesh these into the leg yet. Now I'm going to shrink the mouse 1, 2, 3, and just kind of get that to kind of... You see how much faster it smooths with these larger polygons because there's fewer of them under the mouse. Okay. We're gonna do the same down here. After we do this part of the boot, at least get them the basic geometry for them in position, we're going to add the little strap in front. Okay. And once we get this in position, we also need to move the top of the back one. So we need to go to move topological, make it big, and then grab it here and kind of pull back a bit. And kind of straighten it up a little. And this better suits what we're just done. You can see how the back of the boot is acting with the leg bending forward from it, right? Does that sell itself?
Yeah, I see it. It looks great.
Okay. Like I said, you really need to consider, observing, seeing how things behave, just like in ordinary 2D art. Okay, we're going to delete lower. Now we're going to hide these. And we're going to shrink the mouse again because we're about ready to make the straps. The straps are going to come from the bottom of the feet. At least I'd assume so. Let me go ahead and pull this out onto my desktop so I don't have to keep changing the camera view. Beep, 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 beep. Patreon. Assoum. Okay, they actually start from halfway up at what looks like snaps on the outer shell of the boot. So I'm just going to go ahead. It's actually on these parts itself. So we go to it, and we're going to draw on little snaps on the sides. And then shrink by one, draw across. And draw across. And I have a cat that's staring from up here. Fuzzbutt. Yes, baby girl. Up here. Now. She's staring back and forth between my hand and the stylus. Okay, let's worry about that in a second. We're going to now extract these at a 0.02. Except we have our straps. Now we need to make those snaps a little something something. So first thing we do is we're going to go ahead. What do you want, baby girl? Look at this. I've got a if you're too far behind, just go ahead and refresh. I've got a little fuzz butt on the back of my chair that doesn't normally get up there. Come on.
She's taking place of the black cat.
Yeah. This is my 12-year-old baby girl. Ugh. Do you mind? I'm trying to get this done. No, you cannot be on the tablet. There. Stay up here, baby girl. I've said it before, all three of my cats are unusually affectionate. Alright, so what we're going to do, we got to dynamesh these at 128 because we want to be kind of low poly. And then we're going to get standard brush. We're going to shift the focal length to be a little close out, and then we're just going to subdivide it once, and then we're going to do that, make them a little bit more bulgy. and here. Then with the slash, we're going to, whoop, too big, too deep. We're going to basically draw a line where it's differentiating the two. This is mostly for the convenience of painting it. A separation, a clear joint difference between the leather of the strap and the metal of the snap, or rivet, or whatever it is you end up putting there on the ankles. Now, for the most part, that makes these boots done. It's about time to be the pants. So what we're going to do is we go back to him. We also need to go to the top boot tops and deselect. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to slash with a small but deep slash in front of, right about here, the reason being is that we will then do the positive slash, basically pulling out and sharpening above this line and smoothing below. This will make it look like the bottom seam of those pants that looks, even if you never actually paint flesh tone below this line, it'll look less like, oh, he's just got weird baggy legs. Because we all know that dwarves don't have weird baggy legs. They just like their breeches and they wear them all the time. And we're going to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit weaker. And there. Whoop. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to handle the wraps around the lower leg, because it's going to be very similar to how we're going to handle the wraps around the forearm. And what we're going to do is first we're just going to draw lines. We're going to, we need to make it a lot stronger, and I just draw lines. And some of them will be deeper than others. And then we come back this way. And then we're going to hide these so we can continue around. Here. This is something that will catch the paint of a wash or glaze, or will be completely untouched by a dry brush. We always want to be keeping an eye out on how this figure will be painted, not just printed. So a lot of things we sacrifice realism for the sake of paintability, or we change the geometry of something so that it will look more realistic when it's painted than when it's actually sitting there on an unpainted, primed model. Now, what we're going to do from here, after we clean up this one, is we're going to then take some of these sections and we're going to inflate them. The reason being is this will make it look more like it's overlapping. And it will also exaggerate that groove between the parts. And then, of course, the top here will be inflated again to make it look like it's kind of bulging out from where this is. And then once we've done this, we're going to flatten out the parts that we've just inflated, just because leather doesn't do that. You know, we're giving it volume, but we need to flatten that volume. And what's the time now? It is 7:35. Okay. Now we're going to flatten it. We're going to use a smaller smooth brush. Just hold shift. I'm going to flatten it like that. We're not going to flatten the top part, the top overlap, but we are going to flatten.
We're gonna flatten.
He's here. Okay. Now we make the, I'm sorry, we're going to make the boots visible again. And there we have our leg wraps. And the next thing we do is we got to inflate the lower legs, dangling down on the lower part of the lower legs. We're going to end up bagging this and giving it all sorts of wrinkles. But for now, it's just baggy pants. It's just inflated legs. Whoop. We don't want to inflate the hands, so let's go ahead and hide these hands, because we don't want to affect them by what we're doing. Okay, now normally I'd save wrinkles towards the end, but for this particular take of what we're doing, I think it's probably a better idea to go ahead and do the wrinkles now. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is, there is a little bit of compression wrinkling going on. Whoop. Let's bring the focal shift down. A little bit of still too. There's a little bit of compression wrinkling going on down at the crotch into the leg. So we're going to just draw a few diagonal lines. And then we're going to use Z-sub to go right under them. And we're going to smooth out the ends just a little. You always want the wrinkles to be following gravity to an extent. And now we're going to add back on top of these wrinkles because they lost their sharpness. And up here. Then we're going to draw in the regular wrinkles with a standard brush. And a focal shift to 0. We don't need that 48 anymore. We need the intensity up to about 12. And what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of come out from these compression wrinkles and follow them down and around the baggy parts of the leg. One thing to remember is that wrinkles zigzag. They don't always go, straight and fold in the same spot. They fold almost randomly. Well, yes, they fold randomly because that's geometry for you. Okay, and then I smooth out the ends of the wrinkles because they fade away. They don't burn out. The Kurgan would be unamused. And smooth that. Smooth here. And here. And here. Now we're going back to the slash. We're going to bring this up to 8. We're going to make it a little smaller and go the bottom of each wrinkle. Actually, we need to increase that intensity a little bit. Bottom of each wrinkle, we draw on a sharp edge. And get kind of our zigzag going there. And kind of draw from the middle of this one. Then we're going to go to the sub, make it a little bit stronger and a little bit smaller, and go underneath most of these wrinkles. Because we want it to try and catch them. Make sure that they catch. It also helps sharpen the wrinkles. I haven't lost people, have I?
Oh no, I'm still here.
Well, I was thinking about the people in chat because I haven't had a chance to really peek over.
I've been in there. Narrator talked a little bit, and I've been responding back to him.
Okay.
Any questions pop up, I'll let you know.
Alrighty, excellent. Now when we back out, he doesn't have bare legs anymore. He's wearing baggy pants. Let's go ahead and bring this out a little bit more to help emphasize that it's pants. Yeah, there we go. Slash, come under, and very lightly over, sharpen it. And we smooth it because that one's a little too sticky outy. Same thing here. Okay. Gonna get some soda. The next step is actually the arm muscles other than the forearm. Actually, no, we're going to do the bracers first. So the way we do these bracers, we're going to go ahead and with a control shift and select some polygon. Yeah, it helps if I turn the tablet the right way. I select some polygons. And I'm going to extract them just like I did about 96% of the clothing I make for figures. When you extract, you've got to be sure that it's going to come out enough. If it doesn't come out enough, then what ends up happening is, it'll end up being something that's visible on a resin print. But if, someone who's got an FDM printer it's going to be almost invisible until he gets around to painting it. It's my sci-fi scout had that problem with some of his armor plates. I had to look very carefully at the model to remember where those plates really were. At the size that my figures usually are, extracting down here, a thickness of 0.02 is a very thin surface, but 0.03 is about normal for the kind of edge that you see on most miniatures clothings. Okay. Short arms, I'm thinking these only going to be one or two. Actually, this might be better off to have them be seamed and a couple of stitches rather than wraps, because they're too short, really. Do you see what I'm saying? Well, you will in a second, I guess. Now, are you looking at Discord chat or at the Twitch chat?
Twitch. Should I be on Discord?
No, Twitch. That's what I was worried. That's what I was wondering about. Okay, so do you see what I mean? Those are really, really short bracers.
Yeah.
If he was more human proportioned, it'd probably be. We could probably get some really good wraps going, especially with that right arm. It might not be a good idea.
No, it looks fine.
So what we're going to do, now that we've dynameshed them, we're going to make a really deep slash on the insides of the forearms. I'm going to clear, that's too much. Let's hide his tail and his bone tail. Which is kind of funny because Bandtail is the name of one of the countries in my game world. Yay.
So how far in your TOA are you in?
Let's just say our Game Master is probably one of the stingiest XP awarders in all of D&D Encounters. We just hit 6th level. So we have barely even gotten to the city of Omu.
I haven't even gotten there yet, so we're on level 5.
We've been playing since September of last year. Okay, we have our seamed. This is our current status. Okay, the next step, actually, as a druid, he doesn't need the extreme muscularity that a barbarian might. I think the next step we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do his beard. Now, one of the things we're going to do first, I'm going to use the inflate brush to make his lower lip a little bit fatter. Because with dwarves especially, when they've got their beard on, that lower lip doesn't really sell anything. You need it kind of thick to poke out from all those beardy bits. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and first of all mask off the area under the nose and around where the braids begin for the stash, because that's where his actual, the hair begins. We're going to extract it. Oh, too thick. We need it at 0.02. Extract, accept, draw off. Then we're going to geometry and dynamesh it at 128. And we're going to smooth the sides here. Bring it down from the cheekbone and the underside. Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to take the move tool, or move topological, and kind of blend these into the individual bits on the first braid. The right hand side is already doing pretty good at that. The left hand side isn't. So let's take this out to here. Blend it in. Blend it in, blend it in. Okay, now we're going to go to the actual subtool for the braids, because there's one bit I need to move inside the head. That's this bit right here. I hate it when it does that. I gotta do this to stop it. Basically, it's been used so much, yeah, there we go. So how's this? We need to move the stash space a little bit more to... Yeah. So how's the stash part looking?
It looks like it's meant to be there.
Mm-hmm. Now we go back to him. We're going to hide the stash and the braids. Deselect what's there. Shrink the mouse a little, and then we're going to start off all the way up here and come down like that. Going to do something similar here. We're going to start up all the way above the ear, come down to the jawline, and go around in front. And we're going to blend that into right under the thing. Then we're going to draw under the chin. This is all of the area that was going to be the base geometry for the beard. We're going to extend out that beard a bit as we do this. And then up here up top, we're just going to come down and sharpen it like that. Okay, now we move it out, and we're going to extract this at 0.03 because we need to have enough space and room and volume to actually drag it out into a full filling beard. And we're going to also dynamesh this to 128 because we need to very gently blend this into the space in front and blend the upper portions of the beard. Now one thing is that because he has beard but no hair, that makes some aspects of him a little bit easier. Alright, now just so that we can see what we're doing, let's make that stash bit a little bit easier to see. Okay. Excellent. Now, that move topological, we're going to expand the mouse a bit. We're going to start dragging the beard down. And then we got to hide the body. Oh yeah, you've never heard that before, right? Not if you've ever really played D&D. Every player has been in at least one campaign where the rest of the party was murder hobos. If you weren't a murder hobo yourself. Now, are you familiar with the concept of the murder hobo?
Of course.
Yeah. I actually found a way for my campaign's players to be murder hobos without being murder hobos.
Is that possible?
Well, see, what I did was, one of the countries on my game world has a massive academy, including an academy of arcanoarchaeology. And so what they do is when they find ruins, the first thing they do is they send for a cleaning team. Guess what the cleaning team does?
They had the bodies.
Well, no, they kill any of the monsters that are in there to make it safe for the arcanoarchaeologists to go in there. So, the party is cleaning team for arcanoarchaeologists. I am going to merge this down with the mustache hider, or mustache blender, and I am now going to increase the polygon count a few. And I have noticed that there is a spot right here where I might need to smooth. Shrink this. Oh, yeah, it would help if I... Okay, I see what happened. There was a hole. Okay, so I'm going to have to... Let's view double display properties, double-sided. Okay, that will go away the next time we Dynamesh, but it's a good idea for it not to be there. Okay, now let's make the mouse a bit bigger again. Too big. And we're going to draw on our basic strands of hair. Not with a standard brush, with a slash brush. Make it a little bit bigger. A little bit less oomph. And what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of draw in the edges of the locks of hair. Some of these will be shaped differently than others, but hey.
No two hairs are alike.
Yep. No two hairs are alike, and no two heirs are alike. Just ask any rich man. Hide the big guy. Hide the staff. And then come down from here. And again, most of what we're doing here, hair doesn't always behave like this. It does clump a lot like what we're doing. But what we're doing mostly is to give the impression of hair. Like we're coming in right there. And then we kind of smooth it out a little bit, just to kind of keep it. Yeah, there we go. Alright, now we go back to slash and we go to add and drop that back down to about 10 and start drawing on the sides and the fronts of these locks. This is what catches the dry brush. This is what stands out from the wash or the glaze. Now you notice that this one we've got kind of like a teardrop shape. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a second little edge groove down here. Also, do you have a tablet, or are you using flat mouse when you're sculpting?
Flat mouse until I get the tablet from my buddy that doesn't use his.
I always was jealous. A friend of mine had a Wacom Cintiq Companion, Now, what that makes that different from the other Cintiqs, it's not a tablet. It's a full laptop in a tablet frame that is strong enough to run Photoshop and ZBrush, and if you really wanted to, you could play Skyrim on that darn thing. And he never used it. He got it because he could, because he was rich. And he had heard that it made you a better artist. Yeah, how many times have you heard people say, well, it makes me a better artist? No, it doesn't. Practicing every day makes you a better artist. Okay, so how does his beard and mustache look right now before I blend it with the actual braid?
It looks great.
Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge down so that the beard is all one piece. Frame in. I'm going to bring that up one more level of subdivision, and I'm going to Dynamesh it at 512. Now you see what I mean about it closed up that one hole, but we still have a problem with it. So what we're going to do is, while we have it here, we're going to smooth it. And then we're also going to dig in. We're going to dig in to make it go inside the mouth or inside the upper lip, because this way, when we do the final Dynameshing, it will be already fused into the inside of the head, and we don't need to worry about it. Okay, now the next thing I gotta do is I'm going to blend this part right here. Okay, frame out, divide it a couple times, or divide it once, really. And that's the beard. Don't be scared, it's just the beard. Right, one thing I'm thinking about right now, just because we don't need to worry about it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and subdivide it until it's at the same level of resolution as the rest of the figure. Now, we go back. One thing we must do, we really need to do, is we need to detail those hands. Right now, it's like I described them. It's 5 Vienna sausages on a patty. So we need to go back to inflate. First things first, inflate the inside of this thumb and then smooth it a bit. And give it, whoa, way too strong. Give it just a little bit here. You can see the difference between, I'm going to do it on his bald head and use Control-Z. This is what this level of inflate does with a mouse. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. This is what that level of inflate does with a mouse. With a tablet, I can do everything from this to the full to full fading out, and I can hit Control-Z to undo all of this so that you don't have a weird set of scars on your dwarf's head.
That's crazy.
You see the difference between a mouse and a tablet. It is something that anyone who is planning on using ZBrush for making miniatures, I don't care. ZBrush, Sculptress, Blender, it's all of them are the same way. The control is so much better with a tablet than with a mouse. Okay, so we come up here. We make sure the mouse is about the size of the fingers, maybe about the size. We add on our knuckles, and we draw on the tendons on the back of the knuckle, and we smooth out where they hit the wrist, because those tendons, if you've got them, there's a lot of people who don't have those tendons visible unless they really make a tight fist. And then we have the position of the knuckles. We're looking at the entirety of the index finger so we can place these properly. So this is where those knuckles would be. And once again, middle finger is longer, ring finger is the same, pinky is shorter. And we do that with all of the knuckles. Then we blend the fingers. Now, dwarves are another one of those type of figures that tend to have the slightly more knuckly, more raw-boned hands, so we don't have to smooth them quite as badly as we would on like an elf or a halfling. But it's still a good idea because, I mean, you can see that just doing that improved the shape of these fingers. And then we blend in the base of the knuckle here. Then we're just going to very lightly tab over, just lightly go over these sharp edges that these knuckles have now, just to blend it a bit. Now we're going to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, and very lightly go over and add where the knuckles would be for the thumb, and just smooth them. Also, since you are printing on a resin printer, we're going to add in those little pads of fat on the base of the palm. It's going to be hard to see, and it's probably not going to be visible to anyone who's doing this on a FDM, but it will be visible to resin printers. Now we go back in here. We see that the thumb, since it's sticking a little bit further out, is not quite as bad on this hand as it was on the other. But we still need to inflate the inner fingers to close off this fist, because that's not how, because you know, it will print better, number one. Number two, we now 1, 2, 3, and whoop, draw on our knuckles, draw on our tendons, and smooth it out. And now we're going to have to use the pinky for this one because it's the only finger we can see fully. About 1/3 of the way up we make that knuckle, 2/3 we make that knuckle. And that's a bit larger than it should be, but oh well. Now we just kind of blend them in. We're going to be coming back in just a minute with the slash brush to help differentiate the fingers. I'm also going to be adding on a couple details that I don't know if resin can, if a photon can do. I'll find out. It'll be fun to find out.
Do you know when you're getting yours?
I do not know when it was due here. They did say that they had placed they had, what they did was to make sure it would get to me without having to worry about too much, you know, like time or what have you. They ordered it from their own account on Amazon, so that they could be guaranteed it would be coming to me from a U.S. warehouse.
Nice. Well, I mean, the only reason I got mine is because I posted to them on Facebook, and they ended up giving me the 20% off that they had when they were on sale. So I
Yeah.
had to get it.
Yeah. But like I said, they did one thing that really impressed me, and I don't think they realize. I don't think they realize just how much. They told me that if I do a review, to be as objective as possible. You would think that a company that just sent me a $520 machine would be like,
I want to see that review glow from space.
nope, they asked me to be as objective as I could. Which means they are confident of their quality. You know? Alrighty.
It's a great printer.
Yep. I'll be finding out for myself here in just a little bit. It will probably be here sometime this week. All I've got to do, though, is I still got to buy some IPA and get some things to make a cleaning vat. After my next payday, I'm getting a UV curing lamp, but for right now, it's the windowsill for any miniatures I print.
It's the windowsill for you.
Okay. Oh Lord, back during the height of the cryptocurrency mining nonsense, there was a guy I knew who joked that if he ever had a bad day in whatever game he was playing, he banished his video card to the cryptocurrency mines. I was like, dude, why didn't you just give it to me? My work uses the NVIDIA cards as, you know, the rendering that we do. I've got a GTX 960. Okay. Now let's frame out and make sure everything's visible. Let's select him. Is there anything... Oh, there it is. Is there anything else you can think of, besides the base, that he's missing?
Maybe a few wrinkles on the forehead.
Okay, so you want to make him a little bit older.
And then the staff, I don't know if we can give that some wood grain.
We can give it some grooves. There's no way we could do wood grain at this level, just simply because it would be more like World of Warcraft wood grain, if you know what I mean. Swirls and swoopy lines is about the best we could do. Okay, do you want him to be angry?
Oh yeah, he's always angry, so that works.
Then what we do is we go ahead and we cut in a little groove on each side of the brow like this. And we're going to add in a couple grooves on the side here. Give that wrinkles, that, you know, the crow's feet that angry people seem to get a lot. Angry and happy people get crow's feet. What amazes me is, you know, laugh lines? Did you know that you're more likely to get them if you scowl than if you smile?
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Just in case it comes out, let's give him a little bit of a baggy eye. Okay, now, make this a little bit bigger. I'm just gonna draw one from there, one from here, and one up here. Now we're going to use move. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. We're going to grab this, bring this brow down, bring it this side up. Okay, there we go. Now, thus we have the everything except for the staff. Let's select the staff. We're going to use the slash tool. And what we're going to do, we're going to make it bigger and less deep. just to see what we can do. We're going to just kind of draw on some just lines here and there. Alright. Yeah, that would help if I actually had a Z sub added. Alright. This is just rough shaping here. Now we're going to make it a little bit stronger, a good bit stronger. We're going to very lightly go over the whole thing. This is about the best we can do right now in terms of making it look like wood.
It looks great.
Yeah. We are going to be smoothing. This is a bit extreme, I should note. We are going to be smoothing this, because otherwise there'll be areas where it digs in so deep it becomes too thin to print. And then just some... Let me hide everything but him. Or everything but the staff. It's going to be a... Okay, now, frame it. What we're going to do is we're going to make the mouse a lot bigger. Smooth it a lot lighter, and just kind of just go over it just a bit. Get a bit more natural looking. And then we're going to hit it with inflate. Just a tiny amount. Because we dug into it to make these lines. By inflating, we'll keep the lines sharp, but at the same time bring it back to the size it needs to be in his hand. There we go. It's a lot more natural looking now. So let's go ahead. Go ahead and make everything visible. And there he is. This is Assoum. Now that we can put the tablet and stylus up. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to merge everything down until we have only the one subtool. And frame, we have 2.75 million polygons and it's multiple chunks. We need to do something about that, but before we can, there's one more thing we need to do. I'm pretty sure you can guess what that is. Can you?
You gotta do the defermentation or whatever it's called, right?
I gotta put a base on.
That too.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't like the bases, I see a lot of people just, drop it about 3 millimeters into the floor, because these bases are about 3 millimeters thick. And then it won't slice the base. Deformation, we offset it by by Y rather. About, let's see, 20 is too much, so -1, -0.5. There we go. Okay. Now, I see one thing we have to do. Now we need to blend this in down. Merge down. And frame. This is our buddy, and it's Dynamesh. It's already set for the details we want, which is a 768 resolution and a blur of 0. Okay, I see a problem. I forgot to bring it forward. So we're going to make the draw size 9999 or 999. And the focal shift of -100. And kind of move it forward just a bit. Yeah, there we go. It's not quite a perfect circle no more, but it's close enough as no matter. Okay, now we need to Dynamesh it. So we hit Dynamesh, and instead of 2.204 million polygons, we will probably have less than a million. Oh, we will have almost 2 million, 1.712. But now it's one single manifold surface. So what we do now, we go up to Z plugin. I hit this little circle here and it brings it over down here to the side so you can see what I'm doing. Decimation Master. There's a button for 35K. That's 35,000 vertexes and about 70,000 triangles. I think that with all the detail from the bone shirt and the wrinkled pants and the detailed staff, that might actually be not enough. So instead of 35K, we're going to go to 50K, where it says custom. And I click it. Analyzing mesh. Processing. And it didn't like it. So what we got to do is change this to 49K. Custom.
So why didn't it like 50K?
Sometimes the script just goes, oh! It's not that common when it does that, but it's usually when it hits a certain point it'll stop or it'll lock up. Like here it says computing, please wait. Another option, I hit escape and I abort. Let me go ahead and bring the draw size and the focal shift back to a bit more normal. And another option is make sure Dynamesh is off. See, try it again. Because sometimes having Dynamesh on in that little panel right there can cause it to go, wait a minute, it's still immutable, it's still potentially different. Yeah, no. So when that happens, I Dynamesh it again.
Deacon240 says, hello, Valander.
Hello, Deacon. Alright, so what we do then is we take it 760. Because we've got to change the number. We hit Dynamesh. And we lose a couple points here. Now we hit custom again. Analyzing mesh. Last time it stopped at about 7%. Let's see how far it gets this time. Yep, it stopped at about 7%. There's a problem here somewhere. So I'm going to hit Control Z, or hit Escape rather. And I'm going to change the resolution to 700. So from one... Okay. No, that didn't work. Let's subdivide. Delete lower. And then Dynamesh at 704. Dynamesh closing holes. That's what happened. There were some holes in the mesh somewhere. That occasionally can happen if there's a hiccup in the routine. Okay, now we're at 1.443 million polygons. Let's try it. Now remember last time it hiccuped at 7%. And there we go, it's doing it. Your Dwarven Druid is rockin'.
I love it. I've never seen anyone with bone armor like this, so I like it a lot.
Excellent. And this is how you described it to the rest of your party?
Oh, exact.
What do you think your party's going to do when they see you have your figure?
Become Patreons?
I can only hope. Okay. Oh. Computing, read mesh file, reading go Z. It is down to... Let me close this. It is down to 48,999 active points and 98,054 polygons. This might take a while for some slicers to deal with, but it's a lot easier than the 1.4 million that it was. So now I am going to, and it still has that look. Those boots are really looking, I really like how the left leg is kind of coming out of the boot. And it looks like it's wraps that are folded into that boot. That came out really nice. Okay, so we are now going to export. And we're going to save this in my Patreon new as Assoum Druid figure. Now what'll happen is I will then, here in a little bit after I get off the show, I will be... Let me go ahead and kind of frame it a little bit so it's easier to see. There. After I get off the show here in a little bit, I'm going to be cleaning up the geometry, so to speak. And once I do, I'll be making both OBJ and STL versions and doing a quick render in Daz Studio. I've got a material that... Alright, are you familiar with green stuff?
I have 2 tubes of it right next to me.
I got a material for Daz Studio that looks like green stuff. Finished, cured green stuff. That's what if you've seen that on the renders that I make, how it looks like a green stuff green.
Yeah, I was wondering how you did it.
I have an I-ray material that I made. It's just a particular shade of green with about a roughness of 0.4, and it comes out nice. So I'll be packing it all together, and I'll be sending you an email. Just make sure to give me an email address in the Discord, in the private message.
I'll do it right now.
Okay. And this is one of the miniatures that will only be available to patrons. It will not be available until at least a week after he gets his. So, right now I'm still trying to figure out a way to make a Patreon-only file repository. I'm thinking, alright, when you join a Discord, can you see the history of a given board? Because I want something that I don't have to change the password for every time someone stops being a patron. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Like, there's a guy that does Dropbox, but he changes it just once a month, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying, and especially since if you change it once a month, you're going to pretty much have to either have a pattern, or you'd have to write it down somewhere, and that would be extraordinarily. Maybe a Dropbox with permissions, but there are people who don't use Dropbox. Go figure. Oh, you can see the history in Discord. Okay, so like, if let's say MZ4250 decided to become a patron for some bizarre, crazy reason because he's already got so much more of a library than I could ever add to. He would then join the Discord and have been given the patron role, will immediately see the whole history of the files uploaded to the Discord, because you can upload those to the Discord. It is entirely possible to upload files like that to Discord, the same way you upload images. And I have a Discord channel. At least my intent behind it is that it's like a file vault. So, excellent. Thank you very much. That's probably what I'm going to go ahead and do. As things stand right now, there is the Half-Orc Monk, the Azamar Bard, the Mage with a Bigby's hand, Bigby's clenched fist. The version without the clenched fist is actually on Thingiverse, as per his suggestion. And now the Dwarven Druid. Those are all going. The Dwarven Druid is going to be a week before it shows up in there. The Azamar Bard still has a few days until Tuesday it'll show up in there. Yes, only I can post in that particular channel. Well, only I can. Oh no. Right now it's set to patrons because I wanted something to where only patrons can read it. And I don't know how to set it so patrons can read but not write. Because I don't want everyone to be able to read it. Because it's only for patrons. But right now, if patrons would be able to post. Anyway. It is now 8:30. It has been 2.5 hours since we started with the bear base figure geometry and started putting him into a pose. And here we are now with a dwarf with a braided mustache, bone armor, wrinkled pants, and a worn, a slightly sanded down, uprooted sapling as a staff. And thank you. I'm trying to get more detailed. Now, for those who weren't here when I started, I have a sponsor now. That sponsor they're sponsoring my Twitch stream. And yes, this does mean I am getting a photon. And I will be using it to print the miniatures that I make on this show. Okay. Deacon, you're on my Discord, aren't you? If you are, you're not under the name Deacon. I don't have a lot of people. Okay. Yeah, just hit me up on the Discord later this evening. Meanwhile, I gotta pet this baby girl. She's my baby girl. It's funny, when she's sleeping like this, when I pet her, she actually gets more relaxed. Oh, okay, Unrag. Yep, I know who you are, yeah. Okay, well, like I said before, it is now 8:33. So I'm going to be going ahead and logging out here in a second. Thank you for being with us, Crazy J.
Of course.
And yes, what is your question? And how do you pronounce that? K-Grabus 88? Yes, what is your question? I'm nearsighted, farsighted. Nearsighted, don't have my glasses on, and it's whatever. Actually, a good Sculpting, there's I have a Discord up there. You can simply just make the post in the Discord if you want. We can also probably get you a couple invites to some other Discord servers. I'm assuming that miniatures are not the only things you want to print. Am I correct? Right now, the Ender 3 is probably the absolute best value for the money in printing in any form or fashion. It's at or under 200 depending on the place and time. It's got a decent build volume of about was it 8.5 by 8.5 by 9 3/4 or something like that inches, and it's got exceptional quality. It also comes in only like 12 pieces instead of 485,000 quintillion. Okay, as big as a full head helmet, there's really only one safe option, and that would be a CR10. There are other printers that are as large as a CR10, but most of them are nowhere near the quality or the safe quality. Okay, in sections, yes, you can do it in an Ender 3. If you want it one shot, the only option is the CR10. Or CR10S if you want to pay for additional bits. Make sure it's the Ender 3, not the Ender 2. The Ender 2 is a lot smaller. It's not a bad machine. If it's by Creality, it's a solid machine. And hello, Narthor. Okay. So like I said, I'm getting ready to go ahead. I'm about to sign off after not quite 2 hours, a little over 2.5 hours. Yeah, the Ender 3, it says DIY. It's mostly assembled for you. You don't have to put on every single bolt, washer, and screw that like you would with an ANET or a TiVo kit. Anyway, I'm going to hold my hand up here. I'm going to finger count down to 1, and when I get to 1, I am going to be logging off. This is so I can keep up with the processing lag and make sure I don't, sign out too early. So, I will be logging out here in a bit. I will see you all Tuesday evening. I'm not sure if I have something scheduled for Tuesday. I might be doing another sculpt for that, for like last time, where I sculpted that bard for the British game channel. And I will chat at you later. So that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.